to our 5th Global Burns Night. For those of you who don't know me already, I'm Robert Fleming. I'm the Director of Development here at the University, and I'll take you through our programme this evening. I extend a very warm Scottish welcome to our current students, their families, alumni from around the world, university staff, and to friends and supporters from all over the globe. Just to give you an idea of timings for your haggis, we will look to address the haggis at around 7:35 p.m. GMT, so you'll need to put your haggis on the boil straight away. We expect the event to run for about 90 minutes until 8:30 GMT. As part of last year's Global Burns Night, we asked you to tell us your favourite thing about Scotland, and we shared those thoughts throughout the evening. This year, we want to hear your favourite Scottish word. My favourite Scottish word? Well, at the moment I quite like the word smackaroonies, the fictional Scottish currency favoured by Scottish comedian Kevin Bridges. Speaking of money, we've launched our fantastic Making Waves campaign, aiming to raise £300 million to support scholarships, research, academic programmes, and 2 major capital projects, the New College and Digital Nexus. Making Waves is a visionary campaign launched at a critical time when the role of universities, funding, and their positive impact on society are under significant scrutiny. This campaign showcases St Andrews' unwavering commitment to advancing research, nurturing future leaders, and affirming the transformative power of higher education. I'm delighted to say, when we launched in September, we had already raised £121 million, and at the year end, that had increased to £132.5 million. So thank you to everyone who has helped us with a donation so far. It really is very much appreciated. Now back to tonight. Please use the Q&A function to say hello, tell us where you're joining from, and also share your favourite Scottish word. And I'll do some shout outs during our time together this evening. We're delighted to welcome guests from 40 different countries for tonight's event, including those joining us here in the UK, the USA and Canada, throughout Europe, Australia, Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Taiwan, Saudi Arabia, China and Brazil. And a special shout out from me to Julie in St Monans. For some, this may be your first Burns Night experience, while others may already be Burns scholars. Here in Scotland, Burns Night traditions can vary from household to household, and I hope tonight we have something for everyone. We started our evening with the Chancellor's Piper, Joelle Miller, playing Dark Island and then Scots Wha Hae. Joelle is a third-year computer science student and is proudly serving as the Chancellor's Piper this year. Originally from St Andrews, she began her piping journey at Madras College and has been mastering the bagpipes for the past 8 years. I hope you'll agree that the sound of the bagpipes is the perfect way to kick off the evening. Now, for those of you who are in the local area, the university is hosting a Burns Night with ceilidh dancing on Saturday evening in a couple of days' time. We'll add the link to the chat should anyone be interested. There are a limited number of tickets still available. Tonight, we're delighted to have a performance from Dr. Peter Mackay, a senior lecturer here at the university, and recently named Scotland's new Macker, the National Poet of Scotland. His appointment marks a historic milestone as he becomes the first Macker to primarily write in Gaelic. The role of Macker, a 3-year tenure supported by the Scottish Government and the Scottish Poetry Library, is a prestigious literary position dedicated to championing poetry across Scotland. We also welcome Brian Taylor, former political editor for BBC Scotland and a St Andrews English Language and Literature graduate. And tonight you will also hear from staff, students and alumni, as well as key figures from within the university. And we're delighted to welcome you all to be part of the University of St Andrews Global Burns Night 2025. Without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome and introduce the Principal and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Sally Mapstone, to formally open the evening.
Good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all and to wish each of you a very special and a very St Andrean Burns Night. This is now the 5th year in which the University of St Andrews and our inimitable Robert Fleming have hosted a Global Burns Night in this online format, and this has now become a tradition to which I know that very many of us look forward to. Our Global Burns Night offers us the opportunity to bring together members of our university community to celebrate Robert Burns and everything Scottish. The online nature of this celebration means that tonight we are joined by Burns and St Andrews supporters all over the world, and we are delighted that you can be with us this evening wherever you may be. We are proud to be a Scottish university, indeed, as you all know, Scotland's first university, and we are fiercely loyal to our Scottish and our St Andrews traditions. Only recently, during our recent winter graduations, I took receipt of a pound of raisins from this year's Mackintosh Hall Committee, who assured me that this was a time-honoured hall tradition. Well, if it wasn't, it is now. But at the same time, we are also a global outward-facing institution. This has been so since the very foundation of our university, which was set up on the model of continental universities like Paris, Leuven, and Cologne, and by scholars educated on the continent. The English influence was much less apparent. So now, in St Andrews, we celebrate the expression of Scots culture alongside the cultures and traditions of all of our students and staff, who this year represent approximately 140 countries from all around the world. And this extends to how we celebrate Burns Night, one of the most cherished of Scottish celebrations, but one which has acquired a truly global inflection. Now, whilst you will know me as Principal and Vice-Chancellor, as an academic, I have long studied, written about, and advocated for Scottish literature. My particular focus has been medieval and early modern Scottish literature, but though he was writing a little later than that, in the mid to 18th century, I do have a particular admiration for Robert Burns's poems and songs, and indeed also his letters. Like his favourite Scottish poet, Robert Fergusson, who was, incidentally, of course, a St Andrews alumnus, and from whom Burns drew much inspiration, Burns saw behind the dominant purview of Scottish Calvinism to retrieve that, as he put it, wild happiness of thought and expression, which he found in the old Scotch songs and in the writings of the 15th century Maccas, Henryson, Dunbar, Douglas, and Blind Harry. Burns had indeed a particular fascination with William Wallace, who was, of course, celebrated and almost canonized in Harry's decasyllabic epic, The Wallace, composed in the 1470s, and one of the earliest works to be printed in Scotland by the Edinburgh printers Chapman and Miller, circa 1510. Burns knew the Wallace from one of the later derivatives of Harry's poem, The History of Sir William Wallace, by William Hamilton of Gilbertfield. And of the story, Burns wrote, "The story of Wallace poured a Scottish prejudice in my veins, which will boil along there till the floodgates of life shut in eternal rest." Burns touches on something visceral and inspirational in the Wallace narrative, which resonates until this day, and it is a source of great joy to many of us here in St Andrews that the University Library has recently been able to acquire a late medieval Scottish manuscript that contains some unique Latin material on the Wallace story and the Wars of Independence. I'm sure Burns would have approved. Another way in which Burns links back to the Middle Ages was, to my mind, brilliantly captured by another Scottish poet, Lord Byron, who wrote thus of him: "What an antithetical mind! Tenderness, roughness, delicacy, coarseness, sentiment, sensuality, soaring and grovelling, dirt and deity, all mixed up in that one compound of inspired clay." This works supremely for Burns, but it could also be used to describe the medieval Scots macker whose virtuosity most anticipates Burns, William Dunbar, the poet whom Hugh MacDiarmid advocated Scots in the 1920s should be privileging reading over indulging themselves in Burns nights. But I think MacDiarmid might nevertheless have approved of the University of St Andrews Burns Night, which is so richly cultural as well as celebratory, and both reverent and irreverent. As every year, we have an excellent and varied programme in store for you tonight. And as ever, we will have material from staff, students and student groups, alumni, and friends and supporters of our university. So, my very warmest thanks to you for joining us, to our guest speakers and to our participants, and particularly to our Master of Ceremonies, Robert Fleming, and the development team for organising the event we are undoubtedly about to enjoy. Please make sure that you have your glass of whisky or other drink of choice ready to toast the evening. It's now a pleasure to hand over to Robert Fleming. And for now, thank you again and a very happy Burns night to you all.
Thank you, Principal, for that warm welcome. I do indeed have my whisky here, a lovely bottle of the University of St Andrews graduation edition, and I also have my trusty can of Iron Brew. Talking of whisky, we are now going to head over to Luvian's bottle shop here in St Andrews to meet Archie McDermott, an expert in Scotch whisky.
Hi, my name's Archie McDermott. I'm the manager of Luvian's Bottle Shop here in St Andrews. Luvian's is one of the most iconic wine and whisky shops in Scotland and the UK as a whole. We've been part of life here in St Andrews since 1996 and kind of stretch all the way back to 1981, kind of with our store over in Cooper as well. It's an absolute pleasure to be chatting to you about kind of Burns Night and Burns Night whiskies this evening. Robert Burns has got a long, proud history in connection with the Scotch whisky industry, which we'll get to a little bit more in a second. But tonight, just wanted to really recommend three fantastic drams that have got great links either to St Andrews or to Burns himself. We've been drinking whisky here in Scotland since at least 1,000 years ago, but the first written record we have of whisky in Scotland is actually from right here in Fife at Lindores Abbey back in the 15th century. And so when we're choosing the whisky to pair up with the University of St Andrews Burns Supper this evening, we chose another local distillery just 6 miles down the coast from us with Kingsbarns. Kingsbarns was set up by the Weems family and a local golf caddy called Doug Clement around about 10 years ago now. And the Ducat is named for the dovecot that the whisky distillery is actually built around. It's their core expression in their range, predominantly bourbon casks with a little bit of STR red wine casks in there as well. It's a lovely, light, elegant, fruity sort of style. Works very, very well with your your haggis, neeps and tatties, particularly on that lighter side of things. Just if you're going for like a pre-dinner dram, works incredibly well, but can then carry into the main courses as well. Now obviously Burns was no stranger to whisky, he liked a dram or two. In fact, he was an excise man back in the day, although historic records suggest not a terribly successful one. He actually patrolled the coasts of Ayrshire to prevent illicit distilling coming over from the islands, Arran in particular, and making their way to Glasgow. How successful that job was, we can tell from the fact that records of the time suggest that you could buy Arran water in the pubs of Glasgow throughout Burns' lifetime. There is an amazing connection to Burns though now through the world of whisky, because the farm where he grew up, Lochlee Farm, has now been converted into a farmhouse distillery, and we're showing a really beautiful example here from the team at Lochlee. This is actually a limited edition collaboration with a fantastic Glasgow brewery called Overtone. So this is actually a stout matured whisky. So they've taken their whisky barrels, matured stout in in them. The stout barrels have then come back to the distillery for a finishing of their whiskey in them. That gives a really lovely, rich, slightly chocolatey, slightly spicy note to proceedings that works really well with those rich, unctuous, spicy notes of your haggis. So if you like your big, full flavoured haggis, then this is going to be a really great pairing for it. And you're literally drinking barley from the same land that Burns would have walked hundreds of years ago. And finally, we wanted to show off one of our own creations. In the modern day, you'll find a lot of absolutely fantastic whiskies being produced by independent bottlers. That's companies who buy whiskey from distilleries, then mature it for themselves, creating a unique one-off expression of a whiskey. Luvians do that quite regularly. Our Grad Dram series is rightfully very well known. We've done some amazing bottlings which you'll find in our fine and rare room here to commemorate Open Championships in days gone past. But just recently we released our latest independent bottling, the HP highly peculiar Orkney single malt. We're not allowed to tell you which distillery this came from, although we've dropped some subtle and not so subtle hints. So the label might look like a sauce bottle, but the whiskey within is actually a beautifully rich 19-year-old matured in sherry, lightly peated single malt from the Orkney Islands, and it is an absolutely delicious dram. Lots of long lingering, slightly rich flavour with a lovely delicate hint of smoke that pairs up really well with with your haggis, neeps and taddies, but also will carry on longer into the evening. We'll work with some of those richer dishes, some more desserty sort of stuff as well. I'm a big fan of this, along with something like a cranach and that kind of thing. So yeah, I hope you really have a fantastic Burns night, wherever you are, whatever you're drinking and whatever you're eating, and you choose an absolutely fantastic dram of single malt to celebrate. So, Slàinte.
Thank you very much, Archie, for that great insight and a little canter through various Scotch whiskies. I'll definitely need to try a few of your recommendations, and luckily I have one here. Although truth be told, I've only been trusted with a miniature. It's the Kingsbarns Ducot. I'll look forward to doing that when we're offline. It's my great pleasure now to welcome Brian Taylor, who will now read Burns to a Mouse, a poem he studied during his time here at the university. A distinguished alumnus, Brian is a former BBC political editor and currently serves as a political commentator and columnist for the Herald newspaper. Brian will also be the guest speaker at the Burns Night event in St Andrews this coming Saturday evening.
To a Mouse by Robert Burns, on turning her up in her nest with the plough, November 1785. Wee, sleekit, cowering, timorous beastie, oh what a panic's in thy breastie, thou needna start awa sae hasty wi' bicker and brattle, I'd be laith to rin and chase thee wi' murder and pattle. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I doubt na whiles but thou may thieve, what then, poor beastie, thou mun live. A damon icker in a thrave's a sma request, I'll get a blessing with the lave and never missed. Thy wee bit housie too in ruin, it's silly was, the winds are strewin and naething now to beg a new ane o' foggage green, and bleak December's winds ensuing, baith snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and waste, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here, beneath the blast, thou thought to dwell, till crash, the cruel coulter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap o' leaves and stibble has cost thee mony a weary nibble. Now thou's turned out for a' thy trouble, but house or hald, to thole the winter's sleety dribble and cranrich cald. But mousie, thou art no thy lane in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes o' mice and men gang after gley, and leas nocht but grief and pain for promised joy. Still, thou art blessed compared wi' me, the present only toucheth thee, but och I backward cast my ee on prospects drear, and forward, though I canna see, I guess and fear.
Thank you for that brilliant reading, Brian, and proudly wearing the graduate tie. We're delighted to turn now to the St Andrews student dance group Highland Fusion and their performance in St Sylvester's Quad. Highland Fusion combine traditional Highland dance and technique with contemporary music and choreography.
While I'm stuck here in the dark, and then you said we can't stay like this, and then you said we're just not the same. As it useless for me to wish that there was just nothing in our way. Everybody wants to live this life forever, forever. If there is somewhere else, are we going there together, together? Everybody wants to live this life forever, forever. If there is somewhere else, are we going there together, together forever? If I just hope and you just pray that things work out between us someday, it doesn't feel right to be giving her.
Many thanks to Highland Fusion, dancing to Scary Boar's Live Forever. We're delighted to now hear from alumnus Simon Lamb, poet and Carnegie-nominated author based in Ayrshire on the west coast of Scotland. He is the Screever, the writer-in-residence, at the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum in Alloway. Simon works extensively across schools, libraries, festivals and beyond to entertain, ignite and inspire audiences of all ages. His debut poetry collection, A Passing On of Shells, was published in 2023, illustrated throughout by former UK Children's Laureate Chris Riddle. A second book is forthcoming in autumn this year, Mat O'Shanter, inspired by the Burns classic Tam O'Shanter, reimagined for the eyes and ears and hearts of today, illustrated throughout by Scottish muralist Ross McRae.
Hi, I'm Simon Lamb, writer-in-residence at the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum, and it's great to be joining you here on the Global Burns Night for the University of St Andrews. So I'm an alumnus of the university, and it may be a bit of a surprise to discover that at the university I was a student of mathematics. So you may be wondering why I'm standing today in front of you as the writer-in-residence at the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum, and indeed a published poet. Well, if you're interested, that story can be found in my upcoming book, coming out this autumn. It's called Mat O'Shanter, A Cautionary Tale, and it plays part memoir, do I hear plug, Mat O'Shanter coming this autumn. But maths, Burns, what connection am I going to make here? Well, poetry, numbers do really go hand in hand, especially when it comes to my favourite verse form, the sonnet. A sonnet could be all sorts of things, I would say, in this day and age, and really the only constraint I think that ties them together, 14 lines. Now, as much as I love Burns and those big hitters, Tam O'Shanter being my favourite poem, actually some of his lesser known work contains such great delights. So if you've a moment, I suggest you go and hunt down some of his sonnets, because indeed he did write in the sonnet form. In fact, 2 years after the publication of his collection, poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect, the Kilmarnock edition, 2 years after that, he wrote a poem called A Sonnet Upon Sonnets, in which he used a sonnet to talk about the sonnet form, and specifically the number 14, how perfect a number that is. I particularly like the line that says, before 14, 13's strength is nothing, and 12 even less so, but 14 is perfect. It really is. If you think about it, 14 lines of text, it just looks great. It's this little box on a piece of paper. And as writer-in-residence at the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum, I have been, over the last 3 years, writing a sonnet for each of the 6 sites of the museum, including this one, Alloway Old Kirk. Now, this, of course, is one of the most famous places in all of Scotland. It's the setting for the climactic, wonderful scene at the end of Tam O'Shanter, the incredible dance of the witches, warlocks, and the creatures of hell. Well, I wrote about this poem, and I'd like to share that one with you today. It's a sonnet called The Box of Light, in which I talk about the idea of art and the beauty and maybe the power of poetry, sonnets and otherwise. I hope you're having an incredible Burns season. I wish you all the best from here on the west coast of Scotland. From the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum, I'm Simon Lamb, and this is The Box of Light. To think he conjured up a box of light from prayer-worn shell, that childhood haunt where Burns would set his famous business of the night, and bless with immortality such turns of phrase here goes as "Well done, Cutty Sark." That line, and those beside that take their seats, are incantation, testament, and match. To say, when Chapman billies lead the streets, to strike the light again and watch it catch. A crumbling kirk. He saved it from the dark. To think we all might haul the skill to save our chosen boxes from the fate of grave. To think such skill to save the world is ours. The box of light. Behold the poet's powers. Happy Burns season all.
Huge thanks to Simon Lamb for sharing those brilliant insights. It's great to have so many of you joining us tonight, and I did promise that I would do some shout outs of your favourite Scottish word. A few people have been sending things in without telling us your names though, so give us a chance, give us your name and we'll give you a shout out and we'll say hello back. But it's great to see so many people joining us from across the world. James Campbell tells us he loves the word scunner. As long as you're not scunnered with this evening's event so far, James. Sue Black tells us her favourite word is burch. Google tells me this is a muddle or a mess. Richard Dugdale from the class of 1985 says his favourite Scottish word has to be stushy. Do like that myself. Lots of people love the word dreich. Andy Frost, Jim MacArthur, Sue Wallace-Shaddad, Trevor North and Willie Samadol came up with the same word there. Willie, I think you're coming to us all the way from New England. And Bridget Besser-Schultz in Germany, because as she says, it's Offi Dreich out here in Bonn and not the right time for a wee duck in the Rhine. Yes, indeed. Shirley from Frankfurt is also keen on Havering, whilst Jean Hutchison, 1984 graduate, likes Fantouche, And Ian, in the class of 1989, enjoys the word laldi. I'll be geeing at that, I hope. Nick and Anne Taylor have picked two words, dreich again and huli, referring to the meteorological condition very well known to all of St Andrews students. And as Susan Donald agrees, it's due to be blowing a huli in St Andrews very soon. Indeed, we have Storm Ian hitting Ireland and the UK with a red weather warning coming to us for tomorrow. Mike Day graduated in 1968. His favourite Scots word is havering. Mike gained a lot from his time at St Andrews. He tells us an appreciation of whisky, an addiction to haggis, and bridie and chips, lifelong friendships, a degree, and a wife. And not necessarily in that order, he says. His wife Susan also graduated in 1968. Her favourite word is hen, a term of endearment she used to hear a lot while taking the bus around St Andrews. Someone is joining us all the way from Dingwall who tells us their favourite word is shugally. And another joining us from Bristol who loves the Scotticism, away you go, you mug ye. I believe that means off you go, you rascal. So, now the moment is here as we prepare to tuck into our haggis, and I will begin with the traditional Selkirk grace. Some hae meat and canna eat, and some would eat that want it. But we hae meat and we can eat, say let the Lord be thanked. We will now welcome the Reverend Dr. Donald McEwen, who will perform Address to a Haggis. Donald was born in Glasgow and has since lived in Aberdeen, Japan, Edinburgh, Elgin, Dublin, and since 2001 here in Fife, first in St Monans and now in St Andrews. An ordained minister in the Church of Scotland, Donald serves as chaplain at the University of St Andrews, working alongside colleagues and students from diverse faiths and philosophies, and is currently pursuing a master's degree here at St Andrews in fiction writing. Following the traditional address to the haggis, we will hear again from the Chancellor's Piper, Joelle Miller, as she performs A Man's a Man for A' That, the song traditionally used to pipe in the haggis at a Burns supper.
To a haggis. Fair fa your honest sonsy face, great chieftain of the puddin' race. Aboon them all ye tak your place, painch, tripe, or therm. Wheeler ye wordy o' a grace as lang's my airm. The groaning trencher. There ye fill your hurdies like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time o' need, while through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. His knife, sae rustic, labour dicht, and cut ye up wi' ready slicht, trenching your gushing entrails bricht like onyditch. And then, oh, what a glorious sicht, warm, reeking, rich. Then, horn for horn, they stretch and strive, deal tak the hindmost. On they drive till all their wheel-swalled kites belive are bent like drums. Then old Goodman, maist like to rive, bethank it, hums. Is there that o'er his French ragout or olio that would staw a sou, or fricassee would mak her spew wi' perfect scunner, looks down wi' sneer and scorn for view on sic a dinner? Poor devil, see him ower his trash, as feckless as a withered rash, his spindle shank a good whip lash, his neave a knit. Through bloody flood or field to dash, oh, how unfit! But mark, the rustic, haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread, clapping his whaley neave a blade, he'll mek it whistle, and legs, and arms, and heads will sned like taps o' thistle. ye powers, who'll make mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare. Auld Scotland wants nae skinking ware that jops and luggies. But if ye wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis.
Well, I hope you are all tucking into your haggis now. And while I find my haggis here, we will hear from Dr. Colin Bramwell, who will bring us the immortal memory. Colin is a poet, performer and musician from the Black Isle in the north of Scotland. He regularly performs his work at theatre festivals in Edinburgh and beyond, and Colin was the runner-up for the 2020 Edwin Morgan Prize. His first pamphlet, The Highland Citizenship Test, was published in 2021, and his latest book, Fowr Pessoas, translation of Fernando Pessoas' poetry into Scots, will be published in February 2025. Colin completed a PhD in creative writing at the University of St Andrews in 2023, focusing on the methods and meanings of translating verse into Scots.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying your evening, and thank you so much once more for having me at the annual St Andrews Online Burns Night. My name is Colin Bramwell. I was a doctoral student in creative writing at the University of St Andrews from 2019 to 2023. My project explored the Scots language, the language of Burns, of Scotland, as a vehicle for translating poetry in the present day. This is my second immortal memory, so I'm very happy to be asked back to deliver the speech once more. I know that people tune in from all over the world to join us for this event, and so I'd like to extend my own greetings from Scotland, from Edinburgh, where I am, to you, wherever you're watching or listening from. As ever, Burns cannot keep himself out of the headlines, and so on this occasion I feel it would be remiss of me not to address the subject of Burns and the Scottish higher curriculum. For those of you who aren't in the know, higher is the Scottish equivalent of our A-levels, and Burns has recently been taken off the curriculum, and so I really ought to mention something about this. However, we are also celebrating, or have celebrated, the 250th anniversary of the birth of another important Scottish poet called Robert Ferguson. I think there's certainly a case to be made for Ferguson to be considered among one of Scotland's more important poets. He's commemorated in a statue outside of the Trongate Kirk on the Royal Mile. Also Ferguson, an alumnus of St Andrews to boot, and so I wanted to mention Ferguson to tell you in a way the story of Ferguson, and then I'll circle back to the subject of education presently. Robert Ferguson is very often seen through the lens of the junior Rabbi Burns, the junior as it were. In his own right, he is considered to be one of the more important Scottish poets of the 18th century, a link between Alan Ramsay and Robert Burns. Ferguson is kind of in the middle, born in the middle. He is born in the 1740s in Edinburgh and dies in Edinburgh with a brief sojourn in St Andrews. He dies very young, Robert Ferguson, at the age of 24 years old. And Ferguson's effect on Burns was profound. In a letter, Burns described the older Robert's influence on his own poetics. Burns writes, "Rhyme except some religious pieces which are in print I had given up, but meeting with Ferguson's Scotch poems, I strung anew my wildly sounding rustic lyre with emulating vigour." Which is a very Burns style thing to say, isn't it? Yes, a few things to notice in his language there. Slightly overdone, slightly sentimental perhaps, but this is the language of the age, of course, the 18th century, the age of sentiment. This language is in full flight, but it is clear enough that Burns is trying to get at himself through Ferguson. The Scotch poems, we would call this Scots now, wouldn't we? Unless we were drinking. Wildly sounding, rustic, all effectively marketing speak for Burns, whose self-mythologizing doesn't quite match with what we know about Ferguson, actually. Certainly, maybe Ferguson would sound wild enough to an English audience back in the day, but his poems were written using traditional measures, largely on urban cosmopolitan subjects. To Burns's addressee, perhaps, this attempt to draw kinship between the Roberts would certainly have felt like an appropriate, kind of strongly worded tribute. And it does speak to a strength of feeling, a kind of kinship that was certainly felt by Burns. But we'll return to that presently. Of course, we are very proud of our associations here with Robert Ferguson at St Andrews. One of our more raucous alumni, I would suggest. He was fond of pranks and that kind of a thing, although he was at university a little younger in age than students would be now. I gather that students still like pranks, of course. He immediately established himself as a writer of some genius. Actually, it may have been his writing that saved him from being kicked out of the university after one particular prank. Sadly, Ferguson was unable to graduate. His father passed away, and he was called back to Edinburgh and forced to take up work as a copying clerk in a lawyer's office. In modern parlance, this could be called a money job. At least 100 years after Ferguson was writing, Herman Melville, Melville, of course, a Scottish name, as Hugh McDermott points out in A Drunk Man Looks at the Thistle. Melville writes a story called Bartleby the Scrivener, about a man who has the same job as Ferguson, and eventually refuses to work, as Ferguson eventually did as well. When asked to do any task, Bartleby's response is, "I would prefer not to." This, in the story, at least in Melville's story, comes to betoken a kind of convalescence, a removal from society. Bartleby ends up in a kind of charity house, and Ferguson's own ending, very sadly, Ferguson's own ending was very, very similar to this. Although his job, though, we'll get to that in a second, although his job was perhaps an archetype for something boring, Ferguson did make up for it with a busy social and literary life. And the return to Edinburgh from St Andrews did coincide with a remarkable flourishing as a poet. Vigour, of course, is the word that Burns used to describe the effect of Ferguson on him. And Ferguson is really nothing if not vigorous. In fact, reading Ferguson in relation to Burns, he sometimes does come across as a kind of more tasteful elder, which I think is quite interesting, seeing as how Burns obviously outlived Ferguson by a number of years, although did die in his 30s, whereas Ferguson only lived to the age of 24. There are a few poems, I think, in Ferguson's archive which do rise to the height of Burns, and he did master the Burns stanza, the standard Habbie as it's known. And so I really thought that I should read you a poem by Ferguson. Now, it's obviously traditional in an immortal memory speech to quote Burns, but as Burns is so often quoted, I thought perhaps we could do Ferguson instead. And so here is one of my own personal favourite poems of Ferguson's. It's called The Daft Days, and this is the Scottish term for the 12 days of Christmas, where everyone gets up to hijinks and such like. This is obviously set in December. The weather might be reminiscent of present day weather, though. Now mirk December's dowie face glowers o'er the rigs with sour grimace, while through his minimum of space the blear-eyed sun, with blinking light and stealing pace, his race doth run. From naked groves nae birdie sings, to shepherd's pipe nae hillock rings, the breeze nae odorous flavour brings from Borean cave, and dwining nature droops her wings with visage grave. Mankind but scanty pleasure glean frae snowy hill or barren plain. One winter, midst his nipping train, with frozen spear, sends drift o'er a' his bleak domain, and guides the weir. Auld Reekie, thou'rt the canty hole, a bield for many caldriff's soul, was snugly at thine ingle loll, baith warm and couth, while round they gar the bicker roll to weet their mouth. When merry Yule day comes, I trow, you'll scantlings find a hungry moo. Smaur our cares, our stomachs fu, a gusty gear, and kickshaws strangers to our view sin fairen year. Ye Brewster wives, now busk ye braw, and fling your sorrows far awa', then come and gies the tither blaw of reaming ale, mair precious than the well of Spa, our hearts to heal. Then, though at odds wi' all the world, among ourselves we'll never quarrel. Though discord gie a cankered snarl to spoil our glee, as lang's there's pith into the barrel, we'll drink and gree. Fiddlers, your pins in temper fix, and roseate wheel your fiddlesticks, but vanish vile Italian tricks frae out your quorum. Not fortes wi' pianos mix, gies tullach gorum. For naught can he cheer the heart sae weel as can a canty Highland reel. It even vivifies the heel to skip and dance. Lifeless is he what canna feel its influence. Let mirth abound, let social cheer invest the dawning of the year. Let blithesome innocence appear to crown our joy, nor envy with sarcastic sneer our bliss destroy. And thou, great God of aqua vitae, what sways the empire of this city, when fu were sometimes capernoiti, be thou prepared to hedge us frae that black banditti, the city guard. That final line there, familiar thumbing of one's nose to authority in the standard habit. The city guard were the enforcers of Edinburgh City Council, a sort of widely reviled, perhaps wildly reviled too, and a sort of corrupt presence in Edinburgh. Here they appear as a final punchline in a pretty much perfect poem, balanced just right between locality and locality and universality. Written for a Scottish Edinburgh audience, but enjoyable, I think, in its sentiments for readers everywhere. Now, I mentioned that Ferguson's end was tragic. After a period of depression during which he was unable to continue his labour, he sustained an injury to the head and was committed to by friends to an asylum where he passed away at 24. This is where Burns comes back in the story, because on his first trip to Edinburgh, a very important trip for him, Burns was saddened to hear that Ferguson had been buried in an unmarked grave, and he paid for a monument to be erected for Ferguson. And Burns's epitaph for Ferguson reads, "No sculptured marble here, nor pompous lay, no storied urn, nor animated bust. This simple stone directs pale Scotia's way to pour her sorrows o'er her poet's dust." Again, we feel this sort of sentimental language kind of dragging on us a bit perhaps. And the critic Rona Brown points out that this is a kind of, sets up a kind of story of Ferguson as a kind of tragic figure neglected by the city's establishment. That wasn't actually true. Ferguson was widely actually supported by Edinburgh's literati and others from further afield. One such figure who paid visits to Ferguson was a doctor by the name of Andrew Duncan, and Duncan was inspired by his encounters with Ferguson to begin the process of founding Edinburgh's first asylum. This ultimately was set up in Morningside and is still run today, the Royal Edinburgh Hospital, or the Royal Ed. And Duncan cited the distress of seeing Ferguson, after having his injury, a man of genius going through mental illness, as being a significant motivator in his attempts to found this crucial institution. And so, as Brown says, Ferguson's tragedy was, thanks to Andrew Duncan, translated into human triumph. Of course, the triumph is really also in the poetry itself too, but I focus on Burns's role in this story, I think, not just to tell that story or to honour the man, and we will toast Burns presently, but also to make an argument for Burns in a way, for his necessary place in Scottish history as a sort of keyhole through which we can see ourselves for who we are, see ourselves as others see us, as Burns has and to allows. I think I should probably address the subject of Burns being taken off of the curriculum. Burns can now no longer be studied as a single author subject by Scottish teenagers, although poems by Burns do appear in other places, so Burns has not been extricated from the curriculum as the Express and the Daily Mail reported. However, the thing of him being taken off as a single subject, it did make me wonder how exactly in Scotland we are to see ourselves in a new century. While diversifying a curriculum can take place for well-intended reasons, doesn't the removal of such an emblematic figure as Burns, Scotland's national poet no less, achieve the precise opposite effect of diversification? In the same year, Lewis Grassick Gibbon's Sunset Song was removed again from the higher text, and so certainly as a Scots-speaking writer, someone who writes in Scots, it does feel as though perhaps the more difficult Scots texts have been removed from the curriculum, and that the effects of that, I think, can only be negative. The Scots language isn't actually taught as a language in school; it's taught as a kind of adjunct to literary things, and that's been a problem, I think, for the language itself. The sad fact is that Burns, Gibbon, the writer of Sunset Song, these figures are no longer in the curriculum because teachers didn't want to teach them anymore, or many teachers didn't. These constitute more difficult texts. They have pupils to prepare for exams and such like. And so I do want to add my voice to the chorus of writers expressing some dismay about the mismanagement of the Scottish education system. By current administrations. Now education is in Scotland, is the attainment gap is growing between Scotland and England for the first time, an embarrassment for Scots. Our curriculum focuses on nebulously defined skills rather than on the transmission of knowledge to young Scottish people who may still need Burns more than they know. Of course, not understanding Burns is a long tradition in Scotland, about as long as Burns has existed too, and so yes, one probably suspects that when Scottish teenagers are confronted with Burns, their response will be the same as Bartleby's in Melville's story. I would prefer not to, perhaps they would say. But absurd as it is to make a case for keeping Burns, the case seems to be very obvious and manifest to me. Here is mine. And this is my last word today. The reason that we still need to hold Burns close is, I think, the same reason that we would want to remember Ferguson or any other important Scottish writer, not merely for what he represents to us, but for what Burns gave us and gives us now, a poetry that is public-facing, as comfortable in the pub or in other intimate settings as it is on a stage, written artfully with craft and a tongue that reflects who we are back to us. Through Burns, we get to poetry, to Scots, to a people's history of Scotland, and to the nation, and to haggis, mice, lice, mountain daisies, country fairs, ghost stories, and usquabae. Burns, more than I think any other individual from Scottish history, really shows us ourselves as others see us. And so I think that's why he's valuable, and why I think we do need to be careful with his legacy. Debate it, yes, but certainly not extricate it from educational settings. And so that's my case. To Burns, then, and his memory, his undimmed memory, but only immortal if we choose to keep making it so. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers.
Slange, Colin. Slange, everybody. Now, the local haggis in St Andrews were proving a little bit difficult to round up tonight, but I don't want anybody worrying about us here. I'm tucking into my Burns supper, as is the technical team here in St Andrews. Thank you to Audrey and our events team for delivering that. Now, I did promise you more shout outs, and we've got a message from Bob Phillips. Thinks Hurkle Durkle sums up the greatness of the Scots language. Ro Matheson in Ayr is advocating the use of the word braw a bit more. A great word. Kylie Murray from Bristol is reminiscing about her time with her when her gran used to call her a wee besom, also a blether. is another great word. Neil and friends joining from Copenhagen agree their favourite word is dreich and wishes everyone a happy Burns Night. Steve Heinmarch in Seattle this evening, and his favourite word is spurtle. Hi Steve. Peter and Nicole are in The Hague tonight, and their favourite Scottish word is wee. Ivan Kovac from the class of 2007 is obviously a fan of our national tipple, with his favourite Scottish word, lafroig. Mustafa Akinkigulu from Turkey says, thanks for the great Burns Night. My favourite Scottish word is blether. Claire Thurkle from Norfolk likes the expression peely wally. And mizzle, a perfect description of that kind of rain. Also gloaming, and those are suggestions from Helen in New York City. It's great to hear from you from all over the world. We'll do one more shout out section, so please keep the messages coming in and we'll say hello wherever you are. So next this evening we will hear Emma Montgomery, who will be playing the pipes and a lovely melody on the accordion, filmed at our wonderful venue, the Laidlaw Music Centre. Emma is a student in her final year studying philosophy. She is a Scottish traditional musician, learning the Highland bagpipes from the age of 11 and competing in pipe band championships until 16 as pipe sergeant. After winning the 2019 World Pipe Championships in her grade, she moved to focus on the border pipes, a bellows blown relative of the Highland pipes, and the accordion. very much, Emma. Now, next we welcome Sue Hill, who completed an MA in medieval history, graduating in 1982. Sue has come full circle at the university and will be retiring in April after working here in the development team for the past 10 years. As this will be her last Global Burns Night as a staff member, she felt it would be appropriate as a good Dunhamer from Dumfries to mark it by reading her favourite Burns poem, A Man's a Man for A' That.
A Man's a Man for All That by Robert Burns. It's there for honest poverty that hings his heat and all that. The coward slave, we pass him by, we dare be poor for all that. For all that and all that, our toils obscure and all that. The rank is but the guinea's stamp, the man's the gowd for all that. What though in hamely fare we dine, we're hodden grey and all that. He fools their silks and knaves their wine. A man's a man for all that. For all that and all that, their tinsel show and all that. The honest man, though e'er sae poor, is king of men for all that. Ye see yon birkie called a lord, wha struts and stares and all that. Though hundreds worship at his word, he's but a couth for all that. For all that and all that, his ribbon star and all that. The man o' independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that. A prince can mak a belted knight, a marquis duke and all that. But an honest man's a boon his might. Good faith, he manna fa' that. For all that and all that, their dignities and all that, the pith o' sense and pride o' worth are higher rank than all that. Then let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the gree and all that. For all that and all that, it's coming yet for all that man to man, the whole world o'er, shall brothers be for all that.
Thank you very much, Sue. That was brilliant. Now we welcome Scotland's Macker, Peter Mackay, who will read a few stanzas from To James Smith. Dr. Mackay is an expert in Scottish and Irish literature. His published acclaimed poetry collections have been shortlisted for the Saltire Scottish Poetry Book of the Year, and we're thrilled that he could join us tonight.
Fesgramagaivere, good evening to you all. I'm in Oxford, Joe Eich Rilvi Akuv. I hope you've had a good evening so far, wherever you may be in the world. I'm going to read a short part of a poem that Robert Burns wrote to his friend James Smith early in 1876. Smith was one of the other young lads of Mauchline at the time, one of the other wild lads, you might say. And like Burns in early 1786, he was broke. Both of them considered emigrating across the Atlantic, and though Burns stayed, Smith went. Eventually, first landing in either Jamaica or St. Lucia and making a life there. Like Burns, though, he died young, age 40. But this is from their youth together. This is Burns playfully writing to James Smith, mocking the hubris of poets like himself, with his wit undercutting the sense that there could be any future for his verse. These are just a few stanzas from the middle. Just now I've ta'en the fit o' rhyme, my barmy noddles working prime, my fancy yerked up sublime with hasty summon. Hae ye a leisure moment's time to hear what's coming? Some rhyme a neighbour's name to lash, some rhyme vain thought for need for cash, some rhyme to court the country clash and raise a din. For me, an aim I never fash, I rhyme for fun. The star that rules my luckless lot has fated me the russet coat, and damned my fortune to the groat, but in requite has blessed me with a random shot o' country wit. This while my notions ta'en a sklent to try my fate in good black print, but still the mair I'm that way bent, something cries, "Hully! I read you, honest man, tak tent. You'll show your folly." There's Other poets, much your better, far seen in Greek deep men of letters, he thought they had ensured their debtors of future ages. Now moths deform in shapeless tatters their unknown pages. Then farewell hopes o' laurel boughs to garland my poetic brows. Henceforth I'll rove where busy ploughs are whistling thrang, and teach the lanely heights and hows my rustic sang. Now, of course, Burns's words are not being deformed by moths and shapeless tatters on unknown pages. This is why we are celebrating him tonight, as we do every year. I'm an oscar be joy Jacob. I'm an oscar be bio on time shall reach. Lang may your lum reek. Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. It's wonderful to hear the Gaelic language. Our final musical performance of the night comes from student a cappella group, The Other Guys, featuring Ben, Seb, Joe, Leon and Guy as they sing Sky Boat Song, Wild Mountain Time and Loch Lomond. The Other Guys are an all-male a cappella ensemble and reigning Scottish champions after winning the Scottish A Cappella Championships for 3 consecutive years. I hope you all enjoy their performance.
Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I? Mary of soul, she sailed in a day over the sea to sky. Mull was a stern of the proteg on the starboard bow. Glory of youth, glory his soul, where's his glory now? Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I? Mary of soul, she sailed in a day over the sea to sky. Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I? Mary of soul, she sailed in a day over the sea to sky. Give me again all that was there. Give me the sun that shone. Give me the eyes, give me the song, give me the lad that's gone. Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, say could that lad be I? Mary of soul, she sailed in a day over the sea to sky. Over the sea to sky. Billows and breeze, islands and seas, mountains of rain and sun. All that was good, all that was fair, all that was me is gone. Sing me a song of a lad that is gone, sing of that lad be on. Sing of that Mary of soul, she sailed in a day over the sea to sky. Over the sea to sky. Over the sea to sky. Oh, the summer time has come, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? I will build my love a tower near yon pure and crystal fountain, and on it I will build the castle pluck wild mountain thyme from among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? I will build my love a bound near yon pure and crystal fountain, and return with the spoils to the bound, my dearie. Will ye go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme from among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? Do 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 If my true love she'll not come, then I'll surely find another to pluck wild mountain thyme from among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme from among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme from among the blooming heather. Will ye go, lassie, go? Will ye go, lassie, go? On the bonny, bonny banks all of Lomond, by yon bonny banks and yon bonny braes, where the sun shines bright all of Lomond, where me and my true love will ever want to gaze, on the bonny, bonny banks all of Lomond. Oh, we'll take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland afore ye. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks all of Lomond. I mind where we parted in yon shady glen, on the steep, steep side of Ben Lomond, where deep in purple hue the highland hills we view, and the moon coming out on the gloaming. Oh, ye'll take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland afore ye. But me and my true love will never meet again. We will never meet again. On the bonny, bonny banks
Big thanks to the other guys performing there. Now we've got a little bit more time for some final shout outs, and I'm going to say hello to Janet and Craig, who are joining us from Knaresborough in North Yorkshire tonight. They agree Dreich and Spurtle are excellent Scots words. And someone joining us from Hove near Brighton says a useful word for describing politicians is undoubtedly glaikit, so it's their choice for their favourite Scots word. Louise Taylor, somebody else that I think I recognise, is joining us tonight. Hi Louise. One of her favourite Scottish words is stramash, a word woven into the Scottish football lexicon by the renowned Scottish sports broadcaster Arthur Montford. Some of our anonymous users this evening are loving the word braw. Well, it would have been braw if you had given your names too. And someone else enjoys the word bahookie. And someone watching from Burkina Faso likes keek. Jennifer from London is getting into the party spirit by enjoying the word slange. And Moira in the Loire Valley says her mum used the term a wee nyaff, always made us smile. Quinn Moore is watching from Boston, Massachusetts in the USA, and they say the first Scottish word I learned was smur, as I stood engulfed in it on the first tee of the new course. And Anna Isabel Calarti is joining us all the way from Paraguay in South America. Good evening or good morning. And her favourite word is coorie. We'll all be getting cooried in this evening as the weather is due to be pure minging. So thank you everybody for tuning in and sending us your favourite Scottish word from around the world. Sadly, we're just about at the end of the evening. But please allow me on your behalf to thank all our participants this evening one more time. The Principal and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Sally Mapstone, the Chancellor's Piper, Joelle Miller, Archie McDermott, Brian Taylor, students of Highland Fusion, Simon Lamb, Donald McEwen, Colin Bramble, Emma Montgomery, Sue Hill, Peter Mackay, the other guys, and over here to my right and left, our very own IT services, and all my colleagues in the Development Office who have helped us put together this evening's programme and have kept us watered and fed. Thank you to all for joining us this evening. And from all of us here at the University of St Andrews, have a very happy Burns night and haste you back.